My name is Kycell and I am with Kind Leman, the former squire of the forgotten Minotaur King. The public house's keeper looked on as Kind and myself finished repairing the lobby, after Kind's tussle with the young orc that accosted my bodyguard, Tristafe Myrink. We cleared the debris off the table into a dustbin in the back of the establishment and returned to the keeper. Kind inclined his head in a strong yet supplicating manner and apologized once again for the fight. But he followed it up by putting a strong hand on to the elderly human's shoulder and, giving him a stern look, said,
"Now, I know I already explained, but I want to make myself clear. That orc boy was attempting to assault a personal guest of the mayor, and I was just defending the little lady. And of course, you didn't get a clear look at the guests, or where that orc was taken. But this civil matter is being handled."
With a shaky nod, the keeper of the public house went back to the guest greeting desk and returned his typical nonchalant posture. Kind then ushered me back to the room to get ready for handling the orc, whatever that could possibly entail. With my traveling robes adorned, my still not properly studied magic scrolls packed, and plenty of notepads for continuing the Crunturg research, we headed out. Once we cleared the public house, Kind confirmed Tristafe and Ahani were indeed meeting us at the vault-like cave Kind showed us the previous outing with the hopefully still unconscious young orc. As we walked, I, of course, inquired as to Crunturg's further adventures in pursuit of the Man Reaper and the Rospo Frogmen, whom, when I encountered, seemed to speak of Crunturg as a friend, despite the gruesome first encounter they had. And so, as we made our way through the golden flowers bordering the town, Kind continued his story, and I continued to document in Ahani's absence. Crunturg left the keep in the hands of Kind's father, Fam. As he and the adolescent squire made their way past the crossroads and into the city the Rospo had retreated to, after the disappointing performance of Darlessa the Rakshasi. Yor, the centaur blacksmith, had fitted Kind with heavy plated bronze armor that looked almost comically extravagant at the request of Fam. He was also given a much smaller one-handed warhammer, as to not seem too desperate to impress his master, and he was also given a one-handed sword, both blessed by the Minotaur war god Cord, with the lust for battle. They crossed the copse of trees. Crunturg encountered the Rospo, and he gave Kind a quick rundown of their abilities and tactics, the dark bolts they threw, and their ability to seemingly teleport, not to mention their prodigious strength and resistance to most kinds of damage. The explanation thoroughly put fear of the frogmen into Kind, but he steeled himself for battle all the same. As they approached the kingdom, they could hear dozens of citizens, both human and Minotaur, fleeing across nearly every street, as shops were overturned and residential houses had their windows shattered by scurrying and cackling purple-skinned Ragazzi Rospo. This sounded so different from the calm and somehow dignified, while still seeming horrific, Rospo I encountered up until now, but Kind told me it would be explained soon. Crunturg ordered Kind, as his first squirely duty, to make sure all the citizens of Goldinirod were safe, rescue any he could find from the Rospo at any cost. Crunturg's job was to find answers. The two of them ran through the city as it burned. Kind helped the citizenry by shielding them from the dark bolts of magic that seared his back even through his armor, as Crunturg smashed and pulverized any Rospo that didn't give him a direct answer. Suddenly, a booming voice rang out over the city, magically bolstered to echo through all of the streets.
I got it, boys. The Man Reaper wasn't full of it after all. Now, to drop the act and get out of here.
A towering and monstrously powerful-seeming Rospo appeared in a plume of black smoke tendrils at the center of town, holding a golden lamp-shaped object, Montazma mud pit. He snapped his black, greasy, webbed fingers, and the maniacally cackling and wantonly destructive Rospo flashed to attention. Then, they calmly proceeded to slither into the shadows and impossible corners, disappearing from the city. A confused Crunturg ran to find the source of the voice, meeting back up with Kind at the center of town. And right before them, still not retreating, was Montazma. The unnerving boss of a frogman stepped toward the two Minotaurs and offered a smoky, seeping hand to Crunturg. Angrily, the Minotaur King asked what the meaning of this was. Who were they, and why did they attack the town? Replying with dark wisps of smoke trickling from his smile, Montazma said,
Business is business, and the Man Reaper said me and the boys could take this treasure if we raised a little hell in this quick little burrow, while he and his partner made a getaway.
What treasure and what partner were Crunturg's follow-up questions, now barely restraining himself from mauling this greasy toad on the spot.
Hey, the partner, I'm not at liberty to say. They're a decent employer, but I have no love for the Man Reaper. As for the treasure, this lamp contains a powerful gem. Crazy, right? You know how these things work from legends.
Crunturg was vaguely aware of such magical devices, having little need for them. Personally, he never pursued such things, but the idea of one in his very town was somewhat a shock. Montazma held the golden lamp aloft in his hand, but gave a mildly disappointed look to Crunturg, then crossed his gaze to the young Kind.
The thing is, rubbing these things isn't what gets the gin up going these days. If you're wondering why I stuck around while the boys left, it's because this particular lamp needs hearts.
Montazma's empty hand suddenly grew into a red and black flame-wreathed claw that lunged into Kind's chest, through his armor, and directly around the Minotaur's heart. I was shocked. Such an attack, I wouldn't believe, would have killed him instantly. Yet here before me stood Kind all these years later. I was prepared to ask if that was truly how it happened, when Kind stopped me in my tracks and unbuttoned his canvas vest. On his chest, there was a scar in the distinctive shape of a Ragazi handprint. He rebuttoned his vest and told me we had arrived at the cave entrance, and there before us was a nervous-looking Ahani holding the prosthetic wooden arm of the orc, and an annoyed-looking Myrink with the scrawny orc writhing in the dirt underfoot, tied up with the very sheets they covered him with as they exited the town. We approached, and at the sight of Kind, the orc stopped struggling and gulped in fear. Myrink picked him up onto his feet, quite impressively considering her diminutive mouseling size compared to the tall and hunched orcan body. Kind closed the distance and grabbed the boy by the scruff of his guard armor.
All right, kid. Name, what you're doing here in town, and does anyone know or care you're missing?
Obviously scared witless, the pock-faced orcling stuttered out an answer.
Oh God, I'm Chomsky. I was sent by the boss, to hand out flyers. Oh God, you're the mayor they, totally warned us about.
Suddenly, a nervous, excited energy took over Chomsky the orc, and a little more confidence entered his face.
You, totally better let me go. The boss was given special instructions by the princess to, deal with you.
A mild, concerned expression crossed Kind's visage, likely due to his finding out he was still on the Rajalasad's mind and a potential problem. I thought it might help if I offered him a description of the orc boss. I told him of the tough, burly orc that I first met at the tavern in the barrios of Wolfkeep, then again at the station. However, that was when the orc Chomsky piped up once again.
What? That's, my cousin Hansk. He's totally not the boss. Dude just reports back to the prince and stuff. Our boss is who?
Suddenly, he quieted and looked around nervously. Tired of the lack of real info and his general seeming uselessness, Kind shoved the orc back to the ground.
Myrink, you mind keeping an eye on this clown? This business with the princess having it out for me, and some boss looking for this idiot isn't sitting right. If he gives you any trouble, feed him to the Vigabane crew in the caves.
Myrink pulled her gun and ushered the even more scared than ever orc back towards the cave and out of sight. Kind asked Ahani if she would prefer to stay with Myrink or go back with us into town. After a few moments of deliberation, she decided it was best for her to back Tristafe, much to my surprise. As we headed back to make sure trouble wasn't heading for us, Kind once again picked up his story right at the moment of his impending death. With the dark fire claw embedded into his squire's chest, Crunturg didn't miss a breath and swung his hammer of cord, severing the large Rospo's arm at the wrist. Letting out a grunt or croak of pain, Montazma pulled back, a smoking stump that instantaneously reformed into a brand new hand, while the one clutching Kind's heart dissipated into a wispy ash, bringing the young Minotaur crashing to his knees. Finally, given license to unleash his full rage, Crunturg swung his hammer into Montazma's chest, sending the Rospo boss smashing into the cobblestone street and pulverizing the stony rubble. While prone, the frogman lunged out a hand, and a dozen smoky black tentacles from the shadows pulled Crunturg towards Montazma and the road. With the black flame claw once again prepped to take a heart, Crunturg was drawn in. he used his mid-brow where his horns met to pin Montazma's throat. This caused both of them to sink into the shadows as Montazma attempted to teleport away, resulting in the two warring figures materializing in an elderly citizen's house. The human woman had likely missed the commotion of the recent Rospo attack, thus the sight of her king and a towering frogman tumbling through her ancient clock was quite a shock. As she stood and screamed for help, Montazma saw a much more easier heart to obtain. Breathing a blinding, acidic, caustic plume of smoke into Crunturg's eyes to free himself, he lunged for the woman and nearly managed to claim her heart, just as a bellow from the bestial king rang out, followed by a tackle stronger than a locomotive. Pinned again by the Minotaur, Montazma and Crunturg crashed through no less than 7 house walls of various citizens' homes, until they both collapsed near the center of the city once again, where Kind had finally caught his breath and was ready to fight. Just as Crunturg rose to his hooves, ready to keep going as well. Finally, unpinned, Montazma once again seeped into his shadow while prone and reappeared, simply standing before the 2 powerful Minotaurs. Dusting himself off and his wounds slowly knitting closed, he said,
"Hey, I didn't sign up for all this. There's plenty of hearts out there. I'm out. But, good luck with the Man Reaper. He went that way."
He gestured the 2 Minotaurs to the northeast road exiting the town and prepared another shadow portal.
"Look my boys up. If he doesn't kill you, working for a king could be good business."
He was then stopped by Crunturg once again. Aiming the head of his craghammer towards Montezuma, he then went on to demand satisfaction for the destruction of Goldinirod at the hands of the Rospo and the attempted murder of his citizens. With a groan and a shrug, the frogman gangster shifted the portal across the ground and rested it at the feet of Crunturg and Kind. He then assured them this would take them directly to the Man Reaper, but they'd be on their own to get back. Trusting the Rospo was a toad of his word, Crunturg reassured Kind and affixed Montazma with a parting glare to leave his town immediately. Then the 2 jumped in. The sensation of speeding down a slide overwhelmed Kind and Crunturg, but in what felt like a few seconds, the 2 of them were forcefully ejected onto cold, stone-like flooring. When looking up before them, indeed, was the dark-furred and red-tattooed Man Reaper. But standing just to his left and looming over the 3 Minotaurs was a burly, white, tiger-furred Rakshasi. Just as the story crescendoed, Kind and myself were once again in the town of Goldinirod. However, a large crowd was gathered around an all too familiar building. Kind began to disperse the citizens huddling around the public house, only to see the building in shambles, with the door smashed in from its hinges and a bloodied, nearly toothless innkeeper crawling out. At the sign of Mere Kind, the old man began to shout,
"I'm so sorry. I tried to tell them what happened, but they wouldn't listen. Kind, they're going to your house next."
Hi, my name is Matthew Lewis, and I do the voice of Kycell Bakshi, along with all the additional voices in The Forgotten Minotaur King. I hope you enjoy the podcast and continue to listen into the future. If you want to support my content, please donate to my Patreon, Matthew Lewis Podcasts. Subscribe to my YouTube channel, Matthew Lewis Podcasts, all one word. Follow me on Twitter at Matthew Lewis P. Or leave a positive maximum star review on your podcast app of choice. If you found this podcast, I assume you're familiar enough with the genre to know how important reviews are to the survival of a channel. And I hope you recommend this to your friends. Or if you didn't like it, you could recommend it to your enemies, and I'll teach them a lesson. Keep it sleazy, folks, and thank you.